This is our section, just intro to healthcare data set. Okay, I just want you to understand what we're going to be doing together and get into that Google BigQuery data set, like I'll show you. So, understanding the types of healthcare data captured in the EHR system is one of our goals. I want to give you a preview of what kind of information gets collected in the front end as clinicians interact with patients. We're going to explore the structure of this hospital data set that I've created to be a useful way to explore data and understand SQL and how to use it. And we're going to learn to access and query tables using BigQuery. So, first thing I need you to understand is that the patient journey happens throughout the system in steps. And each step we talk about here as an encounter. That is a common terminology that I've run into at multiple institutions. However, you may work with an institution that just doesn't speak about it that way. They may speak about it as a visit, a stop, a stay, anything like that. But we'll be talking about it as an encounter. So an encounter can happen through the ED. An encounter can happen in the hospital. An encounter can happen in the OR environment and in the ambulatory setting. So different encounter types, I am going to separate here into different tables. So you'll find a table on the hospital encounter, the ED encounter, the OR encounter, that kind of a thing. I think it's just going to help us mentally separate these worlds. It would be very legitimate for this to all be in one place, but that's not what we're going to do here. It's also helpful in thinking about how do we connect data across different episodes of care and that sort of thing. So one patient, many encounters. That's a key simple concept that is worth just reviewing, that patients need to use our healthcare services a number of times in order to stay healthy, stay up to date. And especially if they're very sick, they need to come and visit us, in multiple places at multiple different times. So we cannot just give you straight patient information because we have patients' information across different encounters, different points in time where we served them. You're going to see how we've formed this. Okay, so the demo hospital data set that I've prepared and put into BigQuery for you to explore is going to have two different types of tables. There will be encounter tables and there will be detail tables. This would be what would be referred to as a denormalized data set or a semantic layer, basically meaning there's simple readable information in these tables. It is not a traditional database schema where there's a whole bunch of information spread way out in order to ensure referential integrity. We have just simple to read tables that are sort of analyst ready. Now, if you work at an institution that doesn't have this, start looking into this concept and telling them that you need it. If you are familiar with this, then you're kind of off to the races. But denormalized data or semantic layers are a really meaningful way to give analysts a head start at meaningful data ready to go. And I think you're going to see that as we explore tables and see them. Now, you've got lines here. They are not perfectly representing the relationships between these. However, it's giving you the general concept that a patient can have an encounter in our ED and be there in our ED table. And they may have another encounter where they are in the hospital or the OR setting or the clinic environment. We also have details related to those patients down in the patient detail table. So that is detail that we know about the patient that is fuller, but it's specific to the patient. So it's one time for each patient in that record. And the last is a bunch of details that we have about locations. So when we collect information on where a patient is, there may be 10 things we want to know about that location. Level of care, the department name, the region name, the hospital name, so many things. So I've separated it out. It's an example of the type of other detail that's often desired, but would be really messy to incorporate all the time in all of our tables. And so this is why this is where SQL helps us to reach out and connect that information as needed, just when we need it, but to keep it kind of conceptually separated into useful chunks of information. So that's how I've set this up. The things to just start thinking about is, of course, there's got to be a way to connect these tables, right? And so the things you're looking for here are the patient IDs and the encounter ID. So the patient ID is shared across all tables. There will always be a patient ID except for that location detail because that's about a location, not a patient. There it'll be a location ID. There is an encounter ID, which is unique to each visit. So that is the two main IDs we'll be operating with, just so you're starting to think about it. But we're going to go look really discreetly and directly at all this stuff and how to use it. The idea I just want to share with you is each table gives a different lens on care, a lens of what happened during this time that we served them in the hospital, and what happened during this time we served them in the ED environment. I'm going to walk you through getting set up with a Google account so that you can go ahead and query against the database that I've created. So it's going to start by just getting yourself a Google account. If you don't already have one, I'm going to have you come here. I'm going to create my own just so I can see what your experience would be like. First, are you a business or individual? I'm guessing you're an individual, so let's figure this out. All right, here we are. So where we are headed is called Google Cloud Council. So I'm just going to search for that. Here we go. That's what we were looking for. All right, now it's given us a create and manage your cloud instance. For me, I am Jesse in the United States. I agree and I want to continue. All right, now you're going to have to create a project. So start by going to select a project, choose new project, and you can name it whatever you would like. My project 89517 would be a great one. No institution, it's just for yourself. So we go ahead and hit create. You can have up to 12 projects, it looks like. I didn't know that, but now we do. So you got a project. Let's select that project. So it is the one that we're using. And let's go ahead and look for BigQuery. You see right here, BigQuery. And now you are in Google Cloud Council at BigQuery. So you have the ability now to create tables here, put data and information in here, and use BigQuery just like folks in in an institution that have this might be doing that. Okay, you have your billing project selected, but now we actually have to find the data set that I have available and the project that it's under. So you're going to start by going to this add data, and you're going to pick star a project by name. This environment can be really difficult to find projects and information, but that's what you need. You're going to have to take this exact term, Healthcare Analytics Lab, and put it in here for the starred project name, exactly as it is, no spaces, and you can see that in the description of the video. If you ever come back to this page and don't see the Healthcare Analytics Lab here, which happens often because, as I mentioned, it's just a little confusing the way that they navigate the data here, and it's not as simple as it should be. But if you followed my process I just showed you to star it, you can always toggle this to show starred only, and it will be here. And so what's going to be here is the data set with the tables that we will be discussing and using throughout the course. Hey, so congratulations, you have access into the data set and you can actually start running queries on BigQuery. So a couple of steps and you are set up and operating in the same way that I'm operating day to day, in pointing to a data set in BigQuery and asking questions of that data. I would recommend you go ahead and get started with something like this hospital encounter table as a place to just get familiar with how this works, what are the options, and let's do something simple. So a good way to preview what columns are in that table is just to click on it, and then you see here this preview where you can see the different IDs, their type, and what's in there, a little bit of information. There's a couple options up here. You can go to details where there might be a little bit about the size of the data, a few other items. You can preview the data here where you get a little top 100 or whatever it is, and able to see what's there. Also, a newer interesting item is this Table Explorer, which allows you to go ahead and do a little let's look at this table. And so by default, it doesn't do anything useful. It takes you to a blank page and shows you a query. But this is kind of a cool thing because, especially if you're new to coding and you haven't gotten through the rest of my materials yet, you're going to see that it's pretty quick and easy to write a SQL statement without ever writing one. That is the case always now because of LLMs, but go ahead and choose a few of these fields that might be interesting and hit save. And what it's going to do is actually query and give you a little information on those. So it's going to tell you a bit about what is in there and how many of each type. You see that there are patient IDs, and this patient happens to be in there 7 times, 6 times. So this is a really helpful little thing because it helps you profile quickly the data to see, okay, what's in here? What hospitals do we have? Looks like there's 3 hospitals. This is the amount of times each show up. It's relatively even. There's an admit origin that appears to show where they came from. And there's some kind of even split between these. That's because right now this data set's kind of generic. I will infuse some real healthcare patterns into this so that it's a lot more realistic, but it's a starting point. You've got something to play around with and practice writing in BigQuery. So this is a cool thing because after you've done that, like you've selected these, you can do other things like, hey, I only want to see where it is this hospital with this admit origin and a number of other things. And so it's trying to run, sorry, access denied. Project Healthcare Analytics use does not have BigQuery job create permissions. Okay, shoot, it won't let me do that. So I'm going to have to figure out the access I could give you so you might be able to do something like that because it'd be very fun and interesting. What you can see down below, though, even though it's not going to let us execute it, is it actually wrote the query for us. So what we're going to do is copy and paste this over to a blank query and try to use it. So you see this little plus sign here is going to open up a blank workspace to put a query. And so we can do this select statement of the data, and you can execute it over here. And so this is going to give you the preview of how SQL works. We'll continue to go through this in the course, but just take a glance. You can tell it's actually pretty understandable. It's saying select this column, this column, this column, and this column from this data set where the hospital location is in this list here. And so you're starting to get a little preview as to how this works and what's going on here. And that's kind of what I needed you to see today, is that this is a data set in BigQuery that is not hard to get to, not hard to interact with, and now you've got it. A couple other little things I'll just preview, show you around here. On each of these tables, another quick way to get to a query, one of two things. Number one, when you choose the ellipses to the right, you can see this says query, and it's going to pop you out to a brand new window that gets that statement set up for you, where it's select nothing right now from this data set. And it's going to do a limit statement at the end, which, as you might imagine, limits to only 1,000 records. There's not much data in this because that's how I can offer it to you for free. So sorry, not a ton of records. Limit 1,000 isn't actually meaningful here because I think there's only 700 or something like that. In the select, when you're just getting started and want to preview something, hit select star. Select star means select everything. And so when you run this query, it's going to select everything from the table that I have in there. It's going to give you all of the columns. And when I get rid of that limit, it's going to take you all the way to the bottom to all 700 records that are in here. So there you go. You've just written your first query in yet a second way now. Now, a third way I'm going to show you to quickly get to a query without having much knowledge of this yet is in the ellipses to the right here. If you go to actually, sorry, not the ellipses to the right. Just click on the table itself and back to this view we were in where we were just looking at the fields. You can go ahead and just click on one of these fields, like the DRG name, and you see to the right, it is actually going to spin up a query that says select DRG name from that table. And guess what? If you keep selecting things, like give me this, 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 and this, it will write a query over here for you that will work. So that is another shortcut that, having never seen SQL in about 5 minutes, you can be writing queries and asking questions of a data set in BigQuery, operating in the exact same way that myself and analysts that work with me are operating day to day. So that's kind of exciting. So let's just go back and look at a couple things in the presentation that I want you to see. Data in BigQuery, you have seen me walk you through how to get there and get connected. This is going to be a lot of different terminology that, to be honest, gets a little confusing because the item at the top, the thing that you are operating under, is your project. You saw in the sample one that I set up, I named it my project 5, whatever that number was. And so that is a project. That's kind of like the billing project, the who's doing the work. And that may matter to you in an institution. In this example, you're probably going to lose track of that and forget about it and not care about it anymore. But where it gets confusing is that this healthcare analytics lab that I've made available to you and given you permission on is also a project and referred to in that way. So the difference is it's a project, not a billing project. Super confusing, and not incredibly important to what we're doing together practically, but I just want to point that out, commiserate, and tell you I know it is frustrating. Okay, after that we have that demo hospital system here, which is called a data set. So a data set is within each project. So we'll be using the demo hospital system data set in the healthcare analytics lab project. In that data set, there are a series of tables, and that's what we'll actually interact with. That's where the information actually lives. So this data set name, you see, this is how it would be referred to in Google, and you're going to see how that comes into play as this kind of whole piece is used when we refer to a table and select it in our statement. So we are going to use SQL to explore and join these tables together. You saw that project and dataset and table location, and here's how it comes all together in order to select from it. So you see that all together we put in all three of those items in order to point to that location. And so on the right hand side, you see something that is similar to what we did. I pointed out how to do in the browser is select everything from this table. And to do this table, we have to have that full name. And so the automatic tools I showed you of just selecting this query from the ellipses menu, or from selecting one of the columns when you're looking at the table preview, schema preview, and it creates an automatic query for you. That's really helpful to see because it uses a weird little character in order to put around that full table name. And so to you right now, visually, it might just look like a single parentheses or whatever that's called, or a single quotation, but it's actually not. I don't remember the name of it, but it is on your keyboard in the very top left underneath the tilde. So on my keyboard, I've got an escape button at the very top left. Underneath that is this little tilde, which is the symbol that goes above some of those Spanish letters and stuff, the little accent. And right below that is this little thing, whatever it is called. It is used here to encapsulate the table name, which, little detail, it'll come into play later. It's useful for capturing string and stuff that you need to put together when there's a space in the word. But at the very least, I just need you to know, in order to refer to a table properly, this is what you need. That weird little symbol, the full table name, and the weird little symbol again. You don't need to remember that outright. You can get there easily by doing this step of using the ellipses and the query in that menu, or the two other ways I showed you to kind of automatically draft a query on the table. So that's all we are going to hit for right now. I just wanted to get you introduced and connected so you can explore in the data set as we get going.